All right, so today we're going to be looking at political organizations, primarily the political parties, which will be found in Chapter 16, Section 1 of your textbook, and then interest groups, Chapter 18, Section 1. These are the two major what's called linkage institutions in the policy-making cycle. And basically what that means is that political parties and interest groups will link the people to the agencies of government, such as Congress and the presidency, etc. All right, so let's start with party systems. There are three basic types of party systems, and they're really quite easy to understand because they basically are exactly what they say they are. The first of which is a one-party system. In a one-party system, one party is the only party that will exist in that country. And 9 times out of 10, when you have a country that's a one-party system, the one party that exists is the Communist Party. The second type is a multi-party system. And obviously this is a system in which there are more than two major parties in a country. Typically, most democracies are actually multi-party systems. And what happens in these governments, in order to gain control of the government, major parties have to work together and form what's called a coalition or a partnership. And it's with that coalition that they're able to accomplish things in the government and take control of policy making. The last type is a two-party system, and that's what we are here in the United States. We only have, on a national level, two major parties, and of course that would be the Democrats and the Republicans. We'll talk more about them in class in terms of who they are and what they believe in a little bit later on in this unit, so kind of stay tuned for that one. In addition, we have different types of political parties. The most popular or most common type of party system or type of party is in what's called an ideological. That basically means that the political parties form around a bunch of ideas or thoughts. They call that their platform. It is where they have the list of all their basic beliefs. And so the Democrats and Republicans would be the ideological party. They have beliefs on healthcare and taxes and education, etc. And so it's based upon those ideologies that the party forms. One of the biggest third parties that is an ideological party is what's known as the Libertarians. And they're trying to make it a little bit of a scene on the national level, but they are still classified as a third party. And then there's what's called a single issue party. These parties basically have just one issue that they support, and so their entire platform will be based upon this one issue. So a good example would be the U.S. Marijuana Party and the Pot Party. These are real political parties. They have candidates who run for office. Obviously, they don't win any offices. And of course, the one platform issue that they have is to legalize marijuana. The last type of political party is what's known as a splinter party. These are parties that splint away or move away from one of the two major parties and form a new one. And probably the most famous in history for a third party, splinter party, was created by Theodore Roosevelt. He created the Progressive Party, also known as the Bull Moose Party. And he broke away from the Republicans and ran for president under a different party. And even though he did not win, him running in a third party splinter did have an impact on the outcome of that election. In addition to major parties, the United States also has minor parties, and they do play an important role in our society. The first of that is what's called a spoiler. In other words, they can spoil the election for one of the other major candidates. This happened in 2000 when Al Gore was running against George Bush. There was a third party candidate whose name was Ralph Nader, and he was able to steal votes effectively from Al Gore in that election, and in part is one of the reasons why George Bush was able to win that election. Third parties are also a critic. They have less to lose and everything to gain in what they are trying to portray to the people. And so they tend to be very, very critical of the government, of the Democrats, of the Republicans, and some say maybe more honest about what they believe in, because again, they're not risking losing votes. All they can do is gain votes. And the last one is innovator. They do tend to kind of think outside the box when it comes to ideas and solutions for government, because they're trying to attract people, and so having new inventive ideas is a great way to attract new voters. Now, unfortunately for minor parties, they have a lot of obstacles in making any success. The biggest obstacle is name recognition. The Democrats and Republicans have been around really since the Civil War time period, and it's what we've known. It's our tradition of our politics. Plus, the Democrats and Republicans have enormous amounts of money that is available for them in running for campaigns. So minor parties do tend to have very limited success, really on a local level is where they're finding any kind of success currently in our society. Now, even though political parties are not something that is in our Constitution, they do play an important function. The first and foremost, the number one goal of a political party is to win elections. They want to gain control of the government by winning elections. And if you look at our government today, right now, the Democrats hold the Senate, the Republicans hold the House of Representatives, and of course, the Democrats are in control of the White House. They also have a duty to represent the people. I mean, that is what our government is based on, we the people. And so these political parties represent the ideas of the people for us on our behalf in Washington, D.C. They also serve to educate us. They are the ones that are there kind of in the trenches every day in Washington, and they're able to see what's happening, understand the issues, and be able to tell us here back at home what is happening and what they feel needs to continue or to grow or to change in order to make our society better. And the last is watchdog. We have these two parties that are constantly keeping tabs on each other, making sure that each party is doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And if they're not, they feel they have a duty to let the people know. All right, so moving on to Chapter 18, that's where you'll find the interest groups. Interest groups are exactly what they sound. Their purpose, to further the interest of a group. Exactly what you would think an interest group is for. So exactly how they do that. Well, it really revolves around public policy, that whole policy making framework that we've been talking about this unit. They have something they want to have happen in the government, whether it's a policy they want in place, a law they want changed, a law they want implemented, maybe it's about funding for some kind of an organization. They have an agenda and they want the government to do something. And so they try to convince the government to act in a certain way to further that cause. Sometimes interest groups will also support a candidate. They'll do this primarily through monetary donations that are given to a candidate to help them run for office. But sometimes it's done with what's called an endorsement. Some interest groups are so powerful that just their group or organization telling America that they are backing them, people will vote for them. A good example would be the NRA, the National Rifle Association. Very powerful group. And when they put their support behind a candidate, sometimes that recognition alone will help that candidate to win votes. The lobbyists, these are the people who actually work for the interest group. They're the ones that go door to door, talking to congressmen, trying to convince them to act in a certain way. And they do that through taking them to dinner sometimes. Sometimes they'll just sit down in their office, they'll call them, they'll write letters, they'll do whatever they think is necessary to get the lawmakers to listen. Sometimes they'll write their own bills, and they will give these to the lawmakers in an effort to try and get their policy on the agenda. They'll also do research. They'll do all the legwork for Congress, and they'll say, okay, here's all the reasons why our position is the correct position, and they'll have all kinds of data to support that. Sometimes an interest group will take the next step and become what's called a political action committee, or a PAC. This is really the fundraising portion of the group, and this is where those funds come from that they will give to a candidate to support that person for re-election. Sometimes the money is used for the organization itself, so it's not just for campaigning. All right, let's just take a look at some of the different types of interest groups that exist. The first type are interest groups that support groups. In other words, a very select group of people that interest group is going to look out for the interest of. Some really good examples of an interest group that supports a very specific population is AARP, which stands for the American Association of Retired Persons. And of course, they work for the interest of those that are on Social Security, Medicare, living on a pension. They're looking out for their interests to make sure they have everything that they need. Another good example is the National Association for the Advancement of Color People, better known as the NAACP. And naturally, they work to better conditions, education, etc. for people of color. Agriculture groups, kind of obvious. They are supporting our farmers. And one of the largest interest groups that they have is known as the Farm Bureau. Then there's business groups, and that is what the other picture there is for. They are making sure that a local community's businesses are being supported, and a great example would be the Chamber of Commerce. If you want to know where to go, what businesses exist, where jobs are, what restaurants a place has, you visit their Chamber of Commerce, and they'll give you a listing of everything in that area. So it's a great way to promote business in a local community. Then there's interest groups that support a cause or one particular issue. This is probably the biggest category of interest groups. Some good examples would be the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. Their primary purpose is to support and defend the Bill of Rights. Then there's Greenpeace. This is an environmental organization looking out for things like global warming. They get involved with whale hunting, etc., trying to stop the whales from being hunted. You name it, the environmental cause, Greenpeace is probably there. And of course, the National Rifle Association, and their primary cause, of course, is to defend the Second Amendment. Then there are labor organizations that are there to support primarily unions, kind of those blue-collar unions that exist. A couple of really good examples here are the AFL, CIO, the American Federation of Labor, and the Congress of Industrial Organizations. They are one of the largest labor union organizations in the country. And of course, then there's also the Teamsters. The last type are professional interest groups. So of course, these target a very specific profession, such as the NEA, the National Education Association. That of course supports teachers and the education of K-12 students across the country. And the American Medical Association, which is obviously the one that is promoting healthcare, doctors, physicians, nurses, etc. And that is what you need to know for Chapter 16, Section 1, and Chapter 18, Section 1. If you have questions, just talk to Mr. Highland or Ms. Johnson. Thank you.